Hello everyone, it's Raven here today with a look at the Skaven army roster. So I wasn't lucky enough to be able to get access to the early gameplay for the Skaven or the Dark Elves for their quest battles or a campaign playthrough for just like a few minutes as the Skaven. But I was able to watch it on YouTube and kind of identify everything that I saw. That's why I didn't post a video yesterday. I was just still analyzing everything as much as I could. I don't have any like written notes or anything like that, but just in general from what I'm seeing as the race as a whole, I'm going to try to bring to you today on what I think that I see. I'm pretty sure I understand what I see because I played this game enough to know. So we're going to go ahead and take a look down below at everybody that they brought to offer, starting with their legendary lord. So we have Quick Headtaker, who I sadly misidentified as just a regular Skaven warlord, so sorry for that, dude. And then over here, Lord Skrulk. So these two guys are actually going to be doing lots of work for you in the front line or in terms of their magical abilities. So Quick Headtaker actually has a tremendous amount of AP damage. I think his weapon strength rests at 450, and I think he had at least 90 armor. I can't quite remember the amount of armor that he had, and he had very good melee defense and melee attack, as well as the duelist trait. So singling out heroes or individually strong monsters or lords is something that Quick Headtaker is going to excel at, as the Headtaker title would imply. So good stuff for him. Didn't really get to take a look at too many of his abilities, and sadly he doesn't have any mounts, so I didn't get to see anything about that. So due to the fact that he has no mounts, he is going to get thrown around by large creatures more often than somebody that's mounted. That's just kind of going to get stunned and then be able to swing back momentarily. So for this melee lord down here, he actually has the Bonebreaker mount, which is just a rat ogre, but bigger, better, and stronger in size and all that stuff. So in general, it's going to be, I think, probably a little bit better of a choice than Quick Headtaker, depending on what abilities he has and what abilities that the Warlord can bring to the field. Because, like I said, the mount makes a big difference, and the Rat Ogres do have lots of AP damage, just based on what I saw in general. So a Bonebreaker mount for a Warlord, I'm assuming he's going to have extremely high damage as well as AP damage. So good stuff coming out of them. Now we're going to move on to the Caster Lord, Lord Skrulk. So I actually got to take a pretty good look at him. He has Frenzy. He's a decent melee combatant with 62 melee attack and 45 melee defense, I believe it was. And he does have Frenzy. And from what I remember, he actually had two abilities to start summoning units. One was the dreaded 13th spell for 13 Winds of Magic. I just remember that because it was 13 and 13, and it was a unit I had never seen before. It was called the Death Runners. Now, I had no idea what the hell they were until I watched the Facebook live stream by CA Total War, and they said they were a totally new unit that they just kind of came up with, and Games Workshop okayed to make. So they have a sword that when striking an opponent, whether it's a single entity or a large unit like great swords or whatever it may be, it halves their armor. So the armor sundering is going to be something that this unit uses, but on steroids. So if it's an Ragnarok Queen with 150 armor, it goes down to 75 armor. So that's going to be a pretty big deal. Whoever you're fighting, whether it's a steam tank or a Stegodon coming out of the Lizardmen, it's going to be a lot squishier and easier for your units like Storm Vermin with halberds and stuff like that to be able to take out, or anything with armor-piercing values or just high damage. Things like that will be much more efficient in the front line. So if you can actually mix in like a couple of these units along your front line with really heavy damage-dealing infantry, even very armored targets would just be annihilated by them. Not them per se, even though they do have good combat stats. Probably not the highest weapon strength. We'll have to see. I'm not actually sure. I don't think anybody's actually seen how much weapon strength that they have. Sadly, but any infantry that you have, kind of like the Plague Monks or Plague Monks with Censer Bearers, which have very high AP, flaming, and magical attacks, I think, or if not, just at least magical attacks, will do lots of damage against infantry that normally would still beat them up, even though they do have good AP damage. So, continuing on, let's take a look. Oh, Lord Skrulk actually had another ability, 2 spells from what I remember, 3 spells. He has a kind of a wind spell, not like a wind like Winds of Death, but kind of like it's a breath spell. That's what it was, a breath spell. So it does that little cone spell that kind of shoots out and does some good damage. Sorry, one of my dogs over there scratching itself with its collar on. Then there's a spell for, I guess it's a Horned Rat Vortex. I don't know the name of it. and it's a stationary vortex spell that either does lots of damage or will debuff enemy units that are in contact with it. Not sure. I wasn't actually able to take a look at the spell itself. And then he has another spell to summon. What I saw was 6 uses for a unit of clan rats. So you're able to summon 8 units in total, 2 units of death runners, 6 units of clan rats. So that's, one more than an average vampire lord would be able to take, or a necromancer. So very, very impressive stuff coming out of them for that. But the dreaded 13th spell does cost a lot of Winds of Magic because death runners are very, very useful melee units. So we'll have to actually see how that works out. But lots of utility coming out of the lore of Plague for Lord Skrulk, so good stuff there. And I have no idea what the lore of Ruin is for the Grey Seer. As I understood it, they only had Warp, Plague, and something else, but I don't think it was Ruin. And then Melee Lord, I already took a look at it, Warlord, Bonebreaker, Mount, and I haven't actually seen one yet, but I'm assuming that they're just going to have stats similar to Quick Head Taker, so armor piercing and good melee attack and melee defense. Maybe, I don't know. Heavily armored. I'm assuming for the melee hero over here for the assassin that they're going to function kind of like their gutter runners and stuff like that. So they have a throwing star unit, and they're really fast and able to stalk and have a concealment bomb. And I believe that's either just going to slow down enemy units nearby them or put them into like a temporary hide kind of mechanic, and then get them out of there, because I know I did see the Skitter Leap or Skitter Step spell. I can't quite remember the name, but you can cast that spell on an individual unit and it'll hide them, and it says that they cannot be spotted until at a very, very close range. So good against anything. So you could use it on a Hell Pit Abomination. So say you're like in the forest or something like that, and you had your Hell Pit Abomination all the way on the side of your army. If this is what you really wanted, I'm saying, not like, probably wouldn't be the best unit to use it on, but who knows. You could hide it and then be able to like move it into the back line of an enemy army and just be able to smash them with a fucking stalking Hell Pit Abomination. That sounds ridiculous, but I mean, it's true. You could use it on anything, so that'll be a very interesting ability. So something probably like that coming out of the Assassin with its concealment bomb that I heard of. No mount for him. A Warlock Engineer, kind of a mix of magic and mechanical genius that the Skaven are known for. No mount out of him, but I know he had some sort of a halberd with like a rocket on it that they were talking about, and it goes up into the air and explodes into several projectiles and comes down and strikes like at a group of units. So we'll kind of see how that works out. Then he had a wind spell and some other abilities. I can't quite remember. I think he had the Skitter Leap or Skitter Step spell on him as well. I'm not sure. We'll have to take a look when I'm able to see more stat cards and stuff like that more effectively during like a battle by CA themselves, because lots of the YouTubers weren't really showing off all the unit stat cards of everything, like very slowly, so I wasn't able to get a good look at them, at least not the YouTubers that I was watching, so that was a little bit unfortunate. Caster Hero down here, Plague Priest, uses of the Lore of Plague, uses Lore of Plague, excuse me, and then mounts the Plague Furnace. So Plague Furnace is going to be kind of similar to the Screaming Bell, and it kind of buffs up all your Plague Infantry nearby it, and I feel like it's probably going to have some debuffs for enemy units near it, or perhaps grant poison to units near it. I'm not quite sure. We'll see exactly what they decide to do with this unit in the game itself. Now we're going to move on to all the infantry and stuff like that. So Skaven Slaves with Spears, Skaven Slave Slingers. So they said that this is going to be the highest unit, or model count unit. Get that out of there. Oh my lord. Highest model count unit in the entire game so far. So I'm not sure if they remember that the Tithe actually has 150 units in it, or if they think that the Tithe only has 120 in it, which is the Regiment of Renowned Zombie unit. But if it's more than 150, that's quite a substantial meat shield for sure. That's going to be soaking up lots of damage. However, they said that they are pitiful, but they are extremely, extremely, extremely cheap. So that's always good. So probably like your peasant mob, zombie unit for vampire counts or Bretonia, all that good stuff. But you will be seeing Skaven Slaves with Spear. I'm expecting them to not have charge defense versus large or anything like that. So kind of like your run-of-the-mill goblins, really shitty frontline units, but they have a slight purpose in being able to soak up damage and be able to handle cavalry a little bit, not really, but they do have a bonus versus large because of the spears, even though it's not very huge. And then Skaven slave slingers, so they will have slingers that are able to throw in some rocks at a high arcing angle as compared to a handgunner, which is line of sight fire. And then moving on from them, you have your clan rats, which are better than Skaven slaves, so they're going to have your swords. And then melee infantry next would be the clan rats with shields, so sword and shield. Then clan rat spears and shields, so probably charge defense versus large, and the clan rats with spears and shields down here, but not for the Skaven slaves. And then moving on from there, you have your storm vermin. They said they're going to be a lot more expensive than anything you'd be seeing before them. Clan rats will kind of be in the lower tier, I'd still think, in cost range. Not as cheap as Skaven slaves, but definitely nowhere near in cost of storm vermin. So storm vermin, they said, are going to have the halberds, charge defense versus large, very good armor at 90. So that's really good. So comparing them to an Empire Greatsword, I believe Greatswords have 95 armor, so storm vermin are right there. Probably going to be able to hold their own against Greatswords. Probably not win 1 versus 1, but definitely going to be able to hold them off for quite a while because of halberds having good melee defense. And they're going to have a huge unit size. So I was actually able to take a look at their stats in a battle. I don't have their stats pulled up at the moment, but storm vermin do have a huge model size. I believe it's 90 to 100 or something like that. Can't quite remember, but every single Skaven unit is just massive, absolutely massive in size. So it's very much so a horde faction. Even their elite troops. Excuse me. Try to combine the two words. And then down here is storm vermin with swords and shields. So kind of your more anti-infantry kind of spectrum from the storm vermin, where these guys would be good with their heavy AP damage against cavalry. It's not really that high of damage either, but it's going to be armor-piercing damage nonetheless, and it's going to have a bonus versus large, whereas the storm vermin with swords and shields won't have a huge damage output either, but they will have a bonus versus infantry. I'm pretty sure that they will because they're so elite. And then you get down to your plague monks, who are really cheap, very unarmored, and do lots of good work against infantry. So they're very cheap, and this is gonna be like your damage dealing core right here. Is all the stuff, like from here on out, is all your damage dealers, whereas these guys are just kind of meant to be thrown into the, no, not those guys, these guys are just kind of meant to be thrown into the front and just be like, all right, just hold off everything, please. Because all Skaven have like a 42 move speed, something ridiculous to start off with. I know that clan rats do at least have a 42 move speed, as well as the legendary Lord Queekhead Taker, I believe, does as well. And I can't remember how much Lord Scroll has. I can go back on this video and go ahead and tell you, I think, because I was at the end of it. So yeah, if I go back on this video that I had up, it actually shows his movement speed at 42. So that's pretty impressive. So lots of Skaven will be moving really fast, and they said that as units get weaker and they lose more and more models, they'll actually gain more speed over time. And then whenever they start routing, they actually gain some sort of a trait, and that'll activate as they're routing. That'll make them have an even larger speed bonus. So they're going to be really good at running away from fights. And then when they rally back, they'll have a good speed, but that speed buff from routing will disappear, but they'll still have that high speed of 42 or higher due to the fact that they're taking so much damage in lost models, and be able to get back into the fight quite quickly. So units like your Skaven slaves that want to rout and run away will be coming back to fights and will be surviving quite well, because unless your unit's really fast, like a unit of cavalry or something like that, they're not going to be able to catch Skaven. So let's see. Well, at least routing Skaven. Some units like War Dancers might be able to catch Skaven barely, but only barely. And let's see, go down here. So like I said, Plague Monks, really cheap, dual weapon infantry, so kind of like a sword in each hand, so they're going to be good against other infantry. Probably not the best armor-piercing value, but the Plague Monk Censer Bearers, kind of like a great weapon infantry unit, kind of like a... so it's like they hold like a little metal rod, basically, with a ball and chain on it. So they just kind of swing it around, and inside that chain, that ball, is a bunch of warp stone and other concoctions that just do absolutely devastating work against the front line. So they're going to have magical damage, and it's going to lower the leadership of anybody that's struck by them by 10 or 16, I can't remember. And they'll be doing really heavy damage for sure, but they will get eaten up quite heavily because they're not going to be the most heavily armored unit in the game for sure, but they will be doing lots of damage coming out of these two guys. Night Runners are going to be your cheapest form of your Night Runners, Gutter Runners, Death Runners, and all that kind of stuff. They have a throwing star, and they're able to throw it in a 360-degree arc, regardless if they're sitting still or running. So they will be able to do some good skirmishing for your units in the front line prior to the fights actually starting. Night Runners with slings cannot fire on the move, but they can do that high arc fire, so they can fire over the Night Runners that are skirmishing backwards towards these guys or something like that. And a little combination that they're talking about was using Gutter Runners with poison and Gutter Runners with slingers, kind of something like that. I wouldn't really do that. I would forego the slingers and just go more Gutter Runners with poison, because these guys are going to have the throwing stars just like these guys do, but they're going to have poison as well. So anybody that they hit with their throwing stars in that 360-degree arc will be slowed down, and Gutter Runners are supposed to be even faster than your typical Skaven. So they already have a movement speed of 42. Gutter Runners, I'm expecting to have like a movement speed of like 50 to 60-ish. So slowing down an enemy cavalry unit with that poison is definitely going to make them faster than that cavalry unit, unless it's like a really high-speed cavalry that's not heavily armored. So units like your Wild Riders or something like that might catch up to them. Probably will catch up to them, honestly, but Gutter Runners do have an ability called Ensnaring Net, so it actually slows down whatever unit is close enough or that it targets. I'm not sure if it's a targetable ability or if it's like an AoE, kind of like the smoke bomb that the Nasty Skulkers for the Greenskins have, but that'll be able to slow them down even more, and these guys will just get off, completely free. Not even going to get caught by any cavalry, so good stuff coming out of them. I'm very excited to see these guys, and they're probably going to be doing pretty decent work in the front lines as well. Even though they're going to have smaller unit sizes than Storm Vermin or Clan Rats and things like that, they will probably still do lots and lots of work because they have those missile options, and they're so fast at skirmishing and kiting and all that stuff. And then get down here to the Death Runners. I already talked about them. So weapons team, they only had the Warp Fire Thrower. No Rattling Gunners at this time, so we'll probably see them in the future as a DLC, which is unfortunate, but, we'll probably still get them. They've done guns before. There's guns in this game, and they've done machine guns in games like Total War, Shogun 2 Total War, the Fall of the Samurai expansion, and all that stuff. So we'll probably be able to see something like that in this game. So I would definitely hope to get the Rattling Gunners at some point. They to me are iconic, but probably not to CA or other people, because I don't know how common they were in armies, but I thoroughly enjoyed reading about them and stuff like that, so we'll see. Warp Fire Throwers, I'm pretty sure they do magical damage on top of flaming damage, and they have a leadership debuff as well, just like these Plague Monk Censer Bearers. Now, I'm not sure if these two things actually stack, like their leadership debuffs actually stack or not, but if they do, that'd be really nice. So something they're talking about is stacking fear with leadership debuffs from different units, and so going with that real swarm mentality that the Skaven have, you're probably going to have lots of rear charge or rear attack penalties or flanking attack penalties on enemy units. So tying that together with fear and terror as well as leadership debuffing attacks is going to be really devastating against units with low leadership. So I can foresee the Greenskins having lots of trouble with the Skaven, because they're going to both be sorry, something got on my face right there. So because they're going to be big factions dealing with each other, something that they both rely on lots of infantry, whereas Skaven rely on just destroying leadership pretty heavily, as well as just soaking up all that damage with really shitty units like their Skaven slaves and stuff like that. So we'll have to see how that works out. Now, Greenskins are no pansies. They definitely get in there and lay the smack down, but we'll have to see how they stand up, because they do have infamously bad leadership. So we'll see what actually happens. And then we get to the Poison Wind Globadiers and then the Death Bombardiers. So for the Poison Wind Globadiers, I'm not sure if they said that these were also armor piercing or not. I'm pretty sure that Poison Wind Globadiers are armor piercing and anti-large, and the reasoning behind that was that since it's a gas, and the more exposed skin that it touches, the better it is against that creature. So units like Vargulfs that are huge and very unarmored, they're going to take lots of damage from these Poison Wind Globadiers, or even a Stegodon. Very heavily armored single entity target will take lots of damage from these guys because they have that armor piercing because it is a gas. So they say it's just going to seep in through the armor or whatever. And then Deathglow Bombardiers, I'm not sure. I honestly don't remember what the difference was between these two guys. When they started talking about it, they kind of went on a segue about how the gas works, and I feel like they didn't actually talk about the Bombardiers. So we'll see what the difference is later on in campaign or something like that for ourselves when the game's actually released, or if they actually have a battle that CA does on their own that showcases the Death Globes over the Poison Wind Globadiers. And so next we have the Rat Ogres. Rat Ogres have pretty low armor. I think it's 30, but they have pretty good speed, higher than your average Skaven unit, but slower than your Gutter Runners and stuff like that. And they have really good AP damage, so pretty much about the same kind of qualities in strength as like a Troll or something like that. They have 86 damage, armor piercing, and a bonus versus infantry. And then I believe it's 46 melee attack, and I can't remember how much melee defense. I honestly don't. Or no. 46 movement speed, and then their melee attack and melee defense was in the 20s, low 20s. So not the highest values for defense or attack, so they're not going to be hitting every attack against like a Lord or something like that, but mixed in with infantry in your front line to try and soak up that damage instead of them being singled out by other units, they'll do good work because they have such low melee defense. They're kind of more like, and they kind of brought this up, that they're kind of reworking monstrous infantry to work more like a shock cavalry kind of unit, so they don't have good staying power, but if they're mixed in with something, they're able to do lots of damage. So definitely with 86 damage, that's armor piercing and a bonus versus infantry, mixing them in with units is going to do lots of good work for them because you don't want them taking that damage and you want them putting out as much as they can because they have really high damage output. So moving on, Plague Claw Catapult, really inaccurate, leadership debuff on that as well. And I don't remember if it was magical damage or not. I don't think it was. That's pretty much it. Just a run-of-the-mill catapult, good against infantry at long range. So try and target really blobbed up infantry. Next, they said that the Warp Lightning Cannon kind of worked as like a sniper artillery piece, so we'll see how accurate it is. I'm sure it's going to do magical damage. I don't think it's going to do flaming damage, but for sure magical damage, and it'll have extremely high damage output, I'm sure. So something like this would kind of work on probably around the same kind of levels as like the Luminarch of Hysh, but probably not nearly as much damage. Or Hysh, however you say it, not sure. And so use it against like really large entities, very powerful units like a Lord or something like that. And then we go on to the vehicles, the Doom Wheel. So they said that it actually has like a cannon on the side, a cannon on this side, and then a cannon in the front, mixed in with like some spikes for a really good charge bonus. So they said that you're able to like kind of zigzag move it. So if you kind of like turn like a 45-degree angle to get the arc of the cannons on the side on a unit, it'll actually fire. And then when you turn back facing that unit, like with the front of the Doom Wheel, the front cannon will fire. And then if you turn to the other side, the other cannon will fire. So if you just kind of like haphazardly like run it around the battlefield, kind of facing your enemy and like kind of like the zigzag motion that it's going to be moving, it's going to be able to fire all three cannons kind of like on and off and increase that rate of fire pretty substantially. So that's going to do really interesting work against blobbed up infantry or even single targets, I'm sure, with the because it is kind of like the Warp Lightning Cannon. We'll see how accurate it is. I'm not sure because it's on the Doom Wheel as compared to the stationary cannon, but we'll see. But definitely Micro will reward how well this thing plays out for somebody that brings it. And then down here for their melee monster, they have the Hell Pit Abomination, and it does have the Too Horrible to Die trait that I read about and the Skaven PDF army book the other day. So on death, I don't think they actually said that it just dies and nothing happens. On death, they said Skaven slaves come out. So that's what we'll be seeing, is a unit of slaves coming out. So whatever, not the best unit, but soak up some damage for you. Or otherwise, it'll heal up back to 50% HP, I'm pretty sure. So that's a pretty interesting concept. Kind of like the what was it? The Phoenixes, excuse me, for the High Elves. So good stuff coming out of that. But that's pretty much it. That's the whole army. Kind of like an overview of that. So very very spam heavy. Like you're gonna be seeing lots and lots of units, but as always, you only have the 20 army slots. So we'll see how it actually plays out. You're gonna have to kind of balance like your shitty infantry, like your Skaven slaves, with your more elite troops, like your Storm Vermin or Clan Rats, or what you really want to see is like Plague Monk Censer Bearers to be able to handle heavily armored infantry and stuff like that. And just your general fun and shenanigans with the Hell Pit Abomination, even in the front line, or your Doom Wheel and stuff like that. I'm excited to see how these Poison Wind Globadiers function. Oh yeah, for the Poison Wind Globadiers, they said that they have a really low model count, but they do so much damage that they're really rewarding if you can keep them safe to get them into combat. Same thing with the Warp Fire Throwers. They have a little bit more armor on these 3 units, but because they're such like a low model count unit, if they get focused down really hard, they're gonna get annihilated. So it's really unfortunate, but because no, the Death Globe Bombardiers. I'm sorry, I just now remembered it from the stream. Is that these guys, when they throw their globes, they kind of bust, and it's a more AOE effect that lasts longer. So they're good against infantry blobs, whereas these Poison Wind Globadiers are good against single targets. That's the difference between the two of them. Wow. Finally remembered that. I couldn't remember for the longest time. So Warp Fire Throwers as well just function just like your typical Iron Drake unit, but magical fire damage, all that stuff. So keep these guys alive. They will do tremendous work for you, just like your Gutter Runners with poison throwing those stars out. I'm assuming the throwing stars are going to have like armor piercing values. I'm not quite sure. We'll see. But I'm excited to see how these guys play out, and I'm excited to see these guys in action more. Iron Drakes don't get brought a lot because, people with that lower model count and that really weird Arc of Fire, people don't like to micro them that heavily, but against like factions with really low armor, like the Skaven, these kind of units are gonna dominate. Like people don't understand the amount of devastation that comes out of that unit, especially because like the Iron Drakes are so heavily armored that even if they're focused down by missile troops, like they just take all those shots, because like a lot of them miss, or a lot of the damage just gets absorbed by the armor, and they just dish out retarded damage back to that archer unit and just decimate it, because they're blobbed up and they're low armor, and they're like a perfect target for units like flamethrowers. So you just kind of have to find like your niche for these guys, but they're going to be very rewarding if you like bring them in the right kind of matchups. You just have to put them in the right situations, and they'll do amazing work for you. And that's how everything in this game works, but especially so for the Skaven, because like I said, you have lots of trash mobs and very few very elite units that you really have to take care of. Like they're your little baby, but that little baby will also crush the enemy. So just kind of play them smart, and you'll do well. That's pretty much how the Skaven's going to be. Very fast, very mobile faction, lacking in cavalry, but their infantry as a whole makes up for it. So they'll be a lot of fun. I'm very excited for them. So if you like what you saw, guys, go ahead and leave a like. Subscribe if you want to see more. And as always, comment down in the comment section down below for any suggestions on what I can do to make the videos for you better. And as always, I will catch y'all later.